day. Yeah. Yeah. Say I. Yes, and I. Yes, yeah. Alrighty, let's make some samples today. Everything could be a sample, actually. Like, it doesn't really matter. Everything could be a sample. So let's try to just use whatever we have at home. As long as we have a microphone, we can do pretty much anything. We got a couple of random stuff that I actually wanted to record, and then we can see how we can use it. Probably it's going to be mostly percussion. I got a bell and I forgot tuning fork. That's what it's called. That we can use to create some interesting samples, maybe. Okay. Let's call this sound design. Monday. All right. Let's see, what do we have? We probably want a new channel for I probably want a new channel to record whatever we're gonna be tracking, right? So this is input 1, that's fine. Only thing we probably want to do later is some mild cut, and then we can see what we can do. Okay, let me see that we don't have any click track enabled in case it's bypassed. No, sorry, gotta drink something. The mouse click is terrible. Okay. All right. Let's see what fun we might be having. I'm gonna mute my microphone or the voice in this channel, and then we're gonna track a couple of different sounds and see how that goes. Okay, that should be enough for our purpose. Let's see. Probably gonna have to cut a lot of the empty spaces and unwanted noises out of that. Let's listen back to what we have here. Probably gonna want to use the low cut, as we have been recording this with a condenser which is kind of sensitive. We are picking up a lot of not very necessary low frequency content. Let's put a compressor on that. Nothing crazy. Just 2 to 1. We could sample this straight into grain, or we could chop things out and make them really tidy. I don't feel like hyper cleaning up this thing. So let's see how often we're actually clipping. Clipped a couple of times, I'm quite sure. Oh yeah, that's what we clipping. Lots of times. I think this is mostly probably useful for percussions, obviously. Do we have anything that could be used for more harmonic content? Okay, maybe I have not been choosing the most interesting samples to start with, but just to demonstrate, everything could be. could be a sample. Let's get a new grain or whatever sampler is your sampler of choice. And let's just sample something into that and see what we could achieve. I will mute my microphone so I'm not sampling that as well. Today I wanted to make some random samples. I just looked at whatever I had on my table and was just trying to make an exercise kind of and see what it could be. Well, you know how it is with sound design. Sometimes you never know how it goes, especially when you do a granular stuff. But I'm really not really that happy with what I have recorded. I think I may be continuing making samples that are probably not based on a Foley recording. Like I have a tuning fork, and that is not super exciting. It's a sine wave, which is 440 hertz. That's just in straight A. That is not super exciting. I thought this bell would be more exciting, but it's not. What was kind of cool was this box. But yeah, Maybe we reserve that, and some little nice toy watch that makes some percussive noises. But I think we are going to probably refrain from that, and I don't need to waste disk space. It's not big, but yeah, I'll do that another time. Let's delete this channel and do some more interesting and cool samples. I actually could also delete this grain. I don't need that. And I need to satisfy my OCD and name this grain 1. Oops. Let's mimic 1. Yesterday I started messing a little bit around with Europa. Maybe we can make a sample and then see how that goes. It's mostly Copla strong, so it kind of has a string quality to it. There's not too much going on, some spectral filtering and some LFO automation for that explains this wobbling. That should be a more interesting sample, right? Let's noodle something hopefully interesting, and then we capture that and put that into grain or mimic, and maybe we add a couple of voices to it and see what kind of sample we could come out with. Right. There was something missing. I want to have some weird ass atmosphere with these. So we are sending them through Ripley on the sound effects section. I'm gonna mute the voice for a little bit so we only hear the sound. Yes, I do like Reason, but every DAW is good in my opinion nowadays because technology has come so far and they all have their advantages and disadvantages. But I believe whatever DAW you choose for yourself that you just like, just stick with it and it's going to be fine. that chopping is actually an interesting byproduct or coincidence of the rate knob when you do granular synthesis. We just sampled this loop here into grain without drums, it is. Like a couple of random voices with too much reverb in C minor. And now in grain, we can go wild with that. And this choppiness is like, I have this grain on freeze mode. Freeze mode is super interesting because you can move this wavehead. Let me put this rate back, and also then you can see what I mean with this chopped upness. Also in this modulation matrix, you can do a lot of crazy stuff. Let me put this back to one-shot mode, and then I could also show like you can easily turn a sample into an instrument when you're in freeze mode, especially when you also add an oscillator to it. Then you have like kind of an automatic sub bass, so to speak. But let me turn that off for a second, and I can show more stuff in the modulation matrix. When we turn off keyboard tracking, we don't have pitch anymore. But as this is not mimic, where it chops up by transient, the only way for us to kind of trigger a different start in the sample is if we either set it or if we go in here and program it. So we could say the key should put 100% of its amount to the starting position. That should have now the playhead starting at different positions. This tremolo effect is a byproduct of the rate that is used in grain. Let me show again. I try to go to the original pitch, okay? And the stutter is also the LFO that is modulating the position in the playhead. Let's put this back to 0. Hold up. So this is the sample kind of unchanged. The only thing that's happening is it goes through, also you can't see enough, it goes through this ladder pass. To start making some choppy stuff with this, let us mess with this rate and with the grain lengths. And also this pan knob has a significant impact. It spreads it around in the stereo image. That puts us back to 0 and then listen to it. And what we just did is we put this on freeze mode. In freeze mode, the playhead is kind of stationary. Or it is stationary. It's in freeze. That's what it says. And when it's in freeze and we put keyboard tracking back on, we kind of have like a pad from where we start. But to have it a little bit more interesting, like we could either just move it around. And we can do some super intricate stuff in there and also some random stuff. But it's difficult to be precise with it if you have a big sample. If you have a smaller sample, that's no problem. If you want to look what you could find within a sample and do microsampling, then it doesn't really matter. But I do like this modulation matrix for that purpose. If we're using this now, and let me demonstrate, we see that this is stationary. When I will increase this amount, we will see that the position playhead will start oscillating left and right. And of course, we don't want it to go super crazy left and right. To have it just going a little bit left and right in this file, just put it on a little bit. And now we put back this oscillator, and then we have an instrument. Oh, it's just only half-baked knowledge and a lot of way too many hours of just turning knobs like a madman and watching way too many hours on YouTube. see what happens if we take a smaller section and put it on forward backward loop. And sometimes, okay, let's turn off the click track before we get tired. I always forget. And yeah, that is a way to make samples where you can surprise yourself because you never really quite know what you will find. I know like some people are like super crazy with synthesis and they kind of really know in advance and they're super intentional and they know exactly what they're doing. I'm not that kind of sound design person. I know some basic stuff, but it's not like I'm a synthesis guru. Like if you think like, what's his name? Dan War. Like to me, he's like an alchemist. I have no clue. Half the stuff that he's talking about. I've heard of it, but I have not really grasped most of these concepts and intricate routing and shenanigans and whatnot. There's a lot of crazy stuff. But I think what is important is that we just find simple enough methods so we can find sounds or just go generally into the right direction. And Reason is perfect for that for me. Yeah, alrighty. I think I gotta take a break. I'll be back later. Um, and then we can do more interesting, fun samples like this. Because, like, the basis. Oh, hold on. Before I get off, let's put the same sample into Mimic and see what we can do with that.